Hello, it's Mike here at GameFromScratch, and welcome to another exciting chapter in the ongoing A Closer Look at Game Engine series, a combination of review, overview, and getting started tutorial that should give you an idea if a game engine is a good fit for you. And today what we're looking at is the seminal GameMaker Studio. GameMaker's been around for a long time, since about 1999, I believe, and it's gone by a couple different names, but GameMaker Studio 2 is an overhauled release that was just released a couple of months back. So I think it's a great time to jump in and take a look, see if this game engine is right for you. Now, it has been used to make a number of commercial titles, including Undertale, Spelunky, and Luftrazer. So there is some successful games out there that you have definitely heard of that have been made with GameMaker Studio. Now, one of the things that is going to be divisive, and I'll get away right up front, this is not an open source engine, and this is not a free engine. You have to pay money if you want access to GameMaker Studio 2. And we will look at the pricing a little bit later, but if that is a dead in the water point, no sense in wasting your time, but I do recommend you stick around. It is a very cool engine. It's got a very unique take on things, and you might be actually kind of impressed with what GameMaker Studio can actually do. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Now, first off, GameMaker Studio is made by a company called Yo-Yo Games. Pretty much all they do. It also has a number of different plugins available for different platforms. Now, the tooling itself runs on Windows, various different Linux platforms, and Mac OS, so you can develop on any of those, and it will target a number of different platforms, including potentially a number of different consoles out there, as well as HTML5, Android, iOS, and the desktops earlier mentioned. So since this is a commercial game engine, let's cover price right off the hop. If you head over to yoyogames.com and click on Get GameMaker, you can see the various different options available. Right away, there is a free trial, but it is actually heavily functional limited in what it could do. It can only bring in certain assets. It doesn't have full access to everything. In my humble opinion, this is actually a mistake. If you're going to demonstrate your product, demonstrate your full product. Find another way to limit the demo, be it time-related or whatever. But anyways, there is a free limited trial available. Now, the other options when you go commercial there is the Creator Edition. This was just released, and this is basically for indie developers that want to create either on Mac or on Windows. You have to buy it for each individual platform, and it's $39. Now, the one that's special about this is actually an annual subscription. It is the only one of these licenses that is actually done that way, so do be aware of that. And on top of that, what you're normally looking at is the developer license. This is a buy-once price from $99. And that gives you access to Windows, Mac, and Linux versions of the tooling, and you can target all those platforms as well. You also get into the various different console supports available here. The consoles are UWP, which is Universal Windows Platform, enables you to publish to Xbox and all the various different Windows devices, is $400 for a permanent license. A PlayStation 4 license is $800. Xbox is $800. Ultimate, which is everything, is $1,500 a year. Those are all per year for the consoles. And then where most of you would probably start off, is at this level where you get the desktop version. This enables you to publish for Windows, Mac, or Ubuntu, and that's $100 straight up for 2.x. We've also got an Amazon Fire license for $150, HTML5 is $150, so they're added on via modules. Mobile for $400, and UWP for $400. Now, I'm not actually sure why there's two different sets of UWP pricing, but I'm sure if you dig in more details that are available. It's not really important right now. And without further ado, let's jump right in and take a look at the actual engine. And realistically, what this means is most of you starting out will probably be looking at $99 to get started. What I'm showing you today is the $99 version. I'm also going to be using art that's available from pixelgamemod.org. So if you're wondering where exactly I got these assets from, well, we are actually using this package right here from pixelgamemod.org. Great package, great resources for, exactly this kind of stuff. So here is GameMaker Studio. And right off the hop, it's, let's jump in and actually I'll show you the project. So we're going to close this down, go new project. And you got a choice between drag and drop and GameMaker language. Those are two major scripting programs. We'll get to that in a moment. It doesn't really matter which one you pick because you can actually mix and match within your project itself. But we'll start off with drag and drop. And let's go ahead and I'll create a new project called YouTube. Nope. Okay, so this is your default working area. You'll notice over here we've got drop downs, allows you to collapse the UI in and out. Same at the bottom. The various different windows for search, syntax errors, output, etc. can be expanded in and out. And later on, we'll see there's also dynamic windows that pop up over here, which can also be collapsed in and out. Now, the cool thing is they use this dynamic workspace. It's kind of like a very fast pan around virtual desktop that you can work from. And if you've got a large monitor, you will quickly grow to love it. It pans very well. It scrolls very well. I will show you it in effect. But over here, you can see resources. This is where the various elements that go together to make up your game exist. And I'll show you how easy it is to actually bring things in. So here is that resource I told you about earlier. We'll go to PNG and we'll bring in some backgrounds. So a layer, and we'll bring the background in over. Just bring and drop it in, and middle ground, big, and drop it in, and this will create a pair of sprites. And now what you've noticed is our background actually just opened up two editors, and when we switch between them, you'll see I'm still within this workspace tab. And the cool thing is I can use middle mouse button to pan around between the various different editors. I can do control scroll wheel so we can see all the things in effect. So you can zoom in and out between the various different editors as you have them open. It's a very neat kind of virtual scrapbooking environment almost, and it actually works very, very well. And again, you double click something and it will focus it, bring it in on that. But you also get dedicated tabs, as we'll see in a moment. But you saw there's how easy it is to bring this sprite. You've got your various different sprite controls available over here, and we'll look at that a little bit more in depth. Now the cool thing is you can actually, and this is one of those areas where GameMaker really shines, is you can actually do almost everything directly in the editor. So for example, say I wasn't using a sprite sheet and I was creating my very first game and I needed to create a sprite. Now, if you're experienced in this, you know you can get the various different paint programs out there to work with, but if you want, you can actually work directly inside of GameMaker Studio. There's actually full-blown sprite editing tools in here. So for example, I could come in here, go to sprite, and basically say create a sprite. So I created my new sprite called, I'll leave it with sprite 2. You'll see it, notice up here, but I can just come down here now and go edit image, and I actually have an image editor. I can use a full paint tool that I can use to actually create sprites. So you've got the full sophisticated sets of tools here. We can actually animate said sprite. You've got tools to copy between them. We've got onion skinning options so we can see animation over time. You've got some pretty good sets of what you would actually expect from an image editing tool available in here. So it's a fairly robust image editor, full paletting tools, different brush options available. It's pretty awesome, but not actually something we're going to use today. So we can get rid of that, guys. So we'll just kill that off. But do be aware, there is this full-blown image editing option in there. So you can live completely in the GameMaker Studio world, and pretty much all of the tools you need are actually there. Now what you'll find for your actual game though, this terminology is a little confusing to me, but the heart of your game is a room. So a room is essentially a scene or a level. This is your game structure. We'll go ahead, open up the default one, and you see here we've got our room editor. And this is basically your level editor. Same controls, once again. You can zoom in, zoom out, pan around, etc. But you notice we created these those two sprites we brought in, and you see over here we've got various different layers. The layers allow you to do different things, such as background layers, which is going to come in handy in a moment. Instance layer. Instances are basically entities within your game world. We'll see that in a second. Tile layers, we'll also look at that in a little bit. You can do paths for pathfinding, etc., or animating. Asset layer, or new folder basically for organizing things together, so you can group all of your different layers into different formats. So we've got here a background layer. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and create another layer called midground, like so. And the order is important. So midground will draw in front of background, but behind instances, as you can see in this particular layer. You can toggle visibility off and on this way. So you'll see our layer is actually not transparent, which is not what I want. Color. So I changed my color here. And I want to change my transparency or my alpha back to 0. So I want this layer to be see-through. All right, so we got our background here, and now it's a matter of how do we actually go ahead and add an image to our background. Well, we already created our sprite. And as I mentioned earlier, you can collapse those values down there. Just go ahead and drop our background. So background is selected. Drop it into our world like so. And there is the background. we've got various different tools for controlling it. So you can see you've got your zoom controls down here. We can tile, or stretch, which is what I'm going to do in this particular case. You'll notice you've got the various different properties available for that thing, and then some of this other stuff here. So you've got physics, viewport, camera settings, etc. We're not going to touch on that stuff for now, but this layer is instanced there. We brought it into the world. Now let's go ahead and do something with the midground as well. So we got midground selected now. We'll bring our midground in like so. Once again, we will stretch that full screen, and there you go. Now another thing you might want to do is, for example, scroll this guy off the screen. Well, this is actually one of those things that is built in. We could do this with code, but we don't actually have to. So go ahead and select your background layer, which is our clouds in the background. And you'll see here we have a horizontal speed and a vertical speed. I think it's horizontal I want. I always screw those two up, to be honest. Go ahead and change that, press play, and there you can see the end result. Now, obviously, a bit of an issue here in that we are now kind of, I don't know, scrolling off the screen, which is probably not what we actually want. So let's stop that down, and we will turn horizontal tiling on. And now you will see a nice smooth transition of the clouds in the background. So it's amazing how fast you can actually get things up and going. Now on top of that, let's look a little bit more at an actual sprite. So we looked at the sprites down here earlier, but we're actually going to go ahead and create with a sprite sheet. Very common task in a 2D game. So let's pause you. All right, so we're going to go on down here. Oh, and once again, we can toggle visibility of each different layer off and on easily enough. We can lock them down up here. So now we've got, back over here in our files, we go into the PNG, you will see we have sprite sheets, such as this guy, Hatman walking, like so. So we're going to go ahead and use one of these guys to create an animation. I'll show you how easy this process is. So once again, it is a sprite. The process is a little bit different here. So we're going to bring up the sprite, just like so. We will rename the player sprite. And now we want to go ahead and edit the image. You'll come here, you'll see images over here. And this is one of those cases where I am starting to get a little out of space. So I'm going to go ahead and collapse down each of these sides. So you see how you can get a lot more, usable space easily enough. I didn't mean to actually create a pixel there. So now go up here to the image menu. You see we can go ahead and import strip image, which is exactly what I just showed you there. That guy is existing in my downloads folder under something Vania, Gothic Vania town files. All right. So PNG, sprite sheets, or you could bring in the individual sprites, by the way. So Hatman walking, and you'll see brings up another editor window. We can actually zoom in and see the results of our work right there. So you'll see we have 6 frames. Frames per row is 6, so it's like so. The size is about, I think, 39 by 40, not 50, 52. That looks about right. Here, let's try 40, see if that's right. Nope, 39. Very oddly shaped sprite. But there you can see, it's tiled out each one of them for us, like so. And we go ahead and convert. Yep. So that brought in all of our individual frames of animation. We can now set a playback speed, such as, say, 5, and play. So there is our sprite now in the world, ready to go. You'll see it's in its dedicated editor here. We are done with it, like so. We head back to our room editor, and we're in the instances panel. So now what we want to do is actually create an instance. Now an instance, again, can be thought of as a game entity or node in other languages, or in other game engines is often what you would call as a game entity or a scene object or a node. Well, that is basically what an object is here. I'm just going to go ahead and create a new one. And this is basically where the logic for your game comes from. Create a new one, and we will call this player. So choose its sprite. So select, and we will pick player sprite. So there, our sprite is now attached, and we have a player that is ready to be dragged and dropped into the world. So I can go back to the instances here and grab our player, and boom, player is now in the world. You can see with the player selected, you've got the instance for the player available here. So if we wanted to get rid of that particular instance, we could kill it here. If we wanted to create a separate instance, we could just drag one in like that. So you'll see we now have 2 instances. Select one, go ahead and delete it. like so. And then for that object, what am I going to show you here? Well, first off, let's go into the player. All right. No, that's what I want. What I do want to do, though, I'm going to scale that guy up a bit. So you see, once again, in the workspace, I've got this instance editor that popped up. I make this guy, we'll go 3 times bigger. All right. So there is our guy in the scene. Once again, we go ahead and play. You'll see his default animation is added in there. And that is essentially how you would create an animated player sprite. Pretty simple stuff here so far. You could obviously create multiple of them by creating different instances of the same object, and objects are pretty much the heart blood of your game. The various different entities you will bring in your world will be created as objects, as you have just saw. And this is where the programming starts to come in. I'm going to actually load up one of their examples in a second, show you some of the code that they've done. I'm no master of either of the languages, but I'm going to quickly show you both options, and we'll revisit this in a second. So the logic is actually attached to your either entities or to your objects, so per instance or for all of them, and it is done via, let's pause this guy here. So here is the object here, and you'll notice down here we've got physics. This is where you obviously can set the physics of your components. So if I click this guy, we can set the various different physical properties to this guy. So if I had physics applied to our room, which once again has physics options available down here, we can, obviously animate using, I think it's Box 2D under the scene, but I don't want to be quoted on that. But there is an inbuilt physics engine. But we are interested right now instead, let's open this guy back up. We're interested in this guy instead. And what this guy is basically how programming is done. So you see that events brings over to this dialog over here with this add event option. And you'll see various different events in the game life cycle are available here. This is where you implement your game loop, essentially. These are going to be called at various different points in time of this object's existence. There's one for when it's first created. There's one for when it's destroyed. Step, which is basically the equivalent of update in other game engines. When it's drawn, various different draw calls, and then we've got some for events. So if we press the right key, the left key, etc., we can modify how this guy acts. So let's go ahead and we'll do one right now for key pressed right. So this event is going to fire off when the right key is pressed. You'll see it opened up over here, and since I picked drag and drop, that's what we're actually going ahead and looking at right now. This is the drag and drop coding interface, and the order of calls are going to go down here. And what we essentially do now is visually, like Lego bricks, create our logic. So, for example, I want to get the instance. And again, I am so sloppy at this. So let's say get instance variable, like so. Let me just drag that over. Why are you not allowing me to? All right, let's expand this guy out. And X coordinate, yeah, that's what we want. And that'll bring it into that value right there. Actually, I want to do set. My bad. I didn't want get, I wanted set, which is why things were confusing to me. So here we've got set coordinate, X coordinate, and we will go by 1 relative. So this is probably about as simple as it gets. Basically, on key press of right, we are going to get and set the X coordinate value and increase it by 1. All right, so we should be able to go ahead and press play. This is essentially building our game for the first time. There is a native compiler for making optimal performance. Now, in theory, if I press the right arrow, we are moving very slowly. So 1 was kind of a slow value. Let's set that up a little bit higher, like so. Compile. So you'll see the second compile is a fair bit faster, but it's not really that slow. You can see the update was up here when I did it. So there we go. Each time we press right, we move over by a little bit. And this is essentially how your building blocks go from here. I will actually, again, I'll bring up an example that is much more elaborate. You've got, you know, your conditionals, your controls. You can get if a collision occurred. So basically, you can do something like if object at, and this is only going to now, the conditional of this, it will set that instance variable. So if it's at this particular location, etc. Or we can do if collided with, we can do various different drawing calls. There's a lot to it here, and I'm not going to specifically get into the programming. First off, because I'm brutal at it. I don't know this language near well enough to be any kind of, you know, a subject matter expert on this. And like I said, we'll jump into one of their built-in examples in a few moments. So we'll come back to that. Now, the other option here instead is we could have done this as GML, which is a C-like script. And it's the exact same process. In fact, we can go ahead now. See if I'm doing it in the right spot. I could say convert to GML. Yep, go ahead. And you will see it will actually take that code. It's not the most logical code you've ever seen, but it'll automatically turn it into GML code instead of the drag and drop code. We can actually go backwards the other way as well, and we can convert it back. And what that basically does is create a script node that executes that particular code. And your GML code, your drag and drop code, can actually, like you see here, execute code directly within. And then we can have various blocks that interact with it like so. So it's a handy kind of scripting language. Again, the one is definitely more C-like. The drag and drop is probably better for the person that's exploring how to do things. But as you can see, you can fairly seamlessly transition between the two. So you could prototype with the one and switch to the other. Now, the only other way of coding in GML, or sorry, in GameMaker, is you can actually do extensions and make extensions. Way beyond what I'm going to talk about here. But we will look at extensions a little bit later on. If we go back to the workspace here, bring this guy back out, you'll notice extensions are available down here. So you could go ahead and create an extension. This allows you to write native code to each particular platform. So if you need to create an extension that works for iOS for in-app purchases, for example, you can do that and then add the extension this way, or you can add it from a library, or you can get it from the marketplace, which we will talk about shortly. Now, the last thing I'm going to show you, actually, you know what, I'll show you a couple of the editors here. So we had a couple other ones. We've got one for sound editor, right? So if you have an asset, sound file you want to bring in, such as this MP3 file right here, I can just drag and drop it right in. And there it is, ready for use. You'll see you've got a editing environment here. You can preview your sound effect in action. I think my sound is muted. I don't know if that'll mute for you or not. You got control over how it's generated, how it works. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward for the most part. You can do paths for, you know, controlling how a player is animated, or, you know, AI pathing, etc. Available here. Your script, you can do shaders, which is basically the same editor. So we could create a new shader, and you get a text-based editor, full syntax highlighting, where you could create your, this is your vertex shader and your fragment shader code generated right here. So you get this built-in editing environment to work with. That's the same one you would actually use for GML script. We're in drag and drop mode, so when you do the script, you get that particular script editor. But you see, if we switch back to GML, full-on text editor, you get text completion, syntax highlighting, etc. That's where your code editing is. You've got font options here, and go ahead and create a font. That's how you can import various different fonts from your system, see previews of them in action, and then get ready to go ahead and use them. And the thing that was probably be of most interest to a lot of you is tile sets. Now, tile set enables you to basically bring in a tile set from the outside world and then create tile maps for that. Let's go ahead and show you that for now. We need a sprite to work with the tile set. Let's head on back here. This is why this example is so great. Environment, tile set. So we bring in that tile set like so. And there are our tiles now available to us. Do I need to do anything further? Nope. So we can go back here to our tile set. Right here, pick our tile. That's our tile set right there. So you see it's defaulted out to those different sizes. It works for me. I'm assuming the defaults are pretty good. And there's a lot more power to the tile sets available. You've actually got auto tiling options available. So this will, you know, if you've got transition tiles between, say, water and land, etc. It can automatically fill in the blanks for you if you set up auto tiling. Pretty powerful stuff. And once again, you see we're all in this same editor, this workspace. We can zoom in and around and quickly move between different things. It's a pretty cool stuff. And that way allows you to see your tile sets and your tiling options, or you can create a brush, different tiles from your tile set, etc. available here. You can also animate tiles with this particular editor. So if you've got, say, a flickering torch tile, etc., you can use it that way. And that is the tile sets. Now, if we go on back to our room editor, you'll remember that, where did I? Room, come on, room. All right, why am I not getting? I lost my window. I don't know why I'm not getting my option to expand out that window. Okay, 1 second. Okay, that was a bit of a UI bug there. I'm not sure exactly why this happens, but a quick Google sorted it out. For some reason, this panel disappeared, got lost on me. So the way you can get it back is when your room editor is open, go up here to room and then pick the properties automatically and it will pop back. I'm not sure exactly what that happened there. It feels like a bug to me, but who knows. So anyways, here I am back here. I need my layer view up like so. So now we've got our tile set to work with. Let's go ahead and create a tile layer. So we just create a new tile layer like so. Our tiles would go there. We select our tile set like so. And now you can basically just paint. So the various tiles of your world would go together to create the world this way. It's got full support in there. You can set up collisions for your tiles, so you can make it so you can pass through them, not pass through them, etc. Not really something we're going to get into, but as you see, you can do tile layers. And if you've got obviously tiles on top of tiles on top of tiles, just go ahead and create another set like so. You create it right there and set it up accordingly. Now you'll notice if I go on back here to the tile set in the first place, here we can bring up the properties of it, available there. Let's go away. So you see you've got control over how the tiles are laid out, their width, their height, the size between them, etc. So if you're making a tile-based map, there is a full-blown tile editor in here. It's got full support for a number of the different advanced functionalities, as I said, like auto tiling, collisions, etc. And that's kind of essentially GameMaker Studio in a nutshell. There's obviously more power hidden away. And like I said, there's also the some default projects. So go back here to the beginning. So you can see here, let's go ahead, we'll close some of these things down. So let's collapse all these panels away. There are some assets that are built into it. So I think we can do it through create new project. File. New project. I thought there was an option available. No, there isn't. Okay. There are several defaults. So you can see here there's an arena shooter, drag and drop. There's the dungeon available. These are all from the marketplace, which we'll check out in a second. And here's a platforming example. We won't save our project. We'll open that one up. Here is obviously a more complete, actual, fleshed out game in action. This is completely freely available. So you can see here are the different layers that go together to create it up. Here are different rooms in our world. So let's go ahead and bring this room open. So you can see there is a full platforming environment available. So you can see, click select, there is the player. You can grab the player. So you can see you could have creation code that's called on them, or we can go ahead and edit the object that player is attached to. That object is obviously an O player, so if you come down here, you see objects, O player. So there is the definition for said player. He probably has various different animations already applied to him. We could go ahead, click here, and see the different. So all these different sprites have been applied for us. So you see sprite, there's an idle, there's a walk animation, etc. I didn't mean to actually switch that, but I guess I just did. And then you can see here the various different events have been wired up for it. So on creation, this particular code is called. And let's scroll over, and you'll see here is a much more complex example of scripting in action. So this is the create script being attached. I imagine if I come up here, we can actually see it that way. Okay, no, that's player processing script, but just as well. You can see here is a more complex script that's actually, so here you can see it's checking for the keyboard, if the keys are down, etc. Then do this various different logic. And that gives you an idea of how the scripting is. And there is a lot of this particular material available in the marketplace. And on the topic of marketplaces, let's head on over there. So it's getting increasingly common that asset stores are the norm. And nice thing is GameMaker has a pretty robust asset store that is gonna open. Maybe gonna open. Maybe not gonna open. Maybe I don't have much patience. Oh boy, aren't live demos always fun? Well, anyways, there is a marketplace. We can show you it via the browser. Go back to GameMaker. It's the exact same thing. That's basically just opening an embedded browser. I don't know why it didn't immediately open for us, but here you can see the kind of assets that are available in the marketplace. Some of these are commercial, so those were some of the examples I showed, the Arena drag and drop example or the GameMaker Arena. These are full projects that you can open up. So you've got animations that are available off the hop. We've got extensions. I told you about extensions that you can add to new customizations to your code. A lot of these are natively implemented. So you can see some of these have a price tag attached. Some are completely free. So this one, for example, adds inverse kinematics to it. Facebook integration, iOS camera support, etc. And there's tons and tons of them available. So pretty much everything that exists in GameMaker Studio. Let's close that down. It does not seem to want to cooperate. So basically every category down here, there is a corresponding store for it somewhere over in the marketplace, as well as full projects, etc. Tutorials, things to get you going. Now we can talk about the help and resources available that way. Come down here, mostly what you're going to want is in the documentation. So let's open the manual up. The manual, once again, opens up in a browser, which I think we're going to have trouble with here as well. I don't know what's going on with the integrated browser for us, because that's what the marketplace works with as well. But the documentation is actually all available online. It's the same basic results. So you've got documentation, so let's go, come on, reference. Probably maybe my internet connection. We seem to be going kind of slow. So let's bring up the manual this way. So you see here, pretty solid getting started guide. Walks through the various different pieces. For example, go through the editor, all the different things. So your room editor, this will walk you through the instructions on how to use the room editor, drill down into the various different properties available to it. And then on top of that, you get into scripting. You've got a drag and drop overview, a drag and drop reference, GML overview, GML reference, all the various different things you can do with the GameMaker language. Keep in mind, you can actually extend GML using extensions. So if you need to add additional functionality, you can. That's kind of about the extent of it. On top of that, their community has been around for quite a while. It's very mature, several dozen years of being in existence, and having an internet forum does accumulate a fair bit of knowledge. So there is a good, solid community available out there. And really, that's about it for now. That is GameMaker Studio. Again, I should have mentioned this right up front, but there's a text version of this as well. So if you want, I will link that down below. I will also do a link to GameMaker itself. Hope you found that interesting. Even if you don't have any interest in GameMaker itself, sometimes it's just interesting to see other tools in action. Personally, I do see the appeal here. I can understand why some people would choose it. I also do understand, yes, why people would spend money. I also get how it can be somewhat expensive once you start adding those platforms, but generally, in a lot of cases, those platforms aren't going to be a really big deal, because if you're at the point where you need to publish for PlayStation or Xbox, you're probably at the point where you're going to commercialize your game anyway, so it's really only the people that say want to create a free game for Android that the price gets a little steep. But if you're in the world where you're actually creating a commercial game, the cost for a module exporter is probably one of the smallest aspects of it. Now, I'm not really keen on their new $40 a year indie version. I would actually kind of prefer to see them go with somewhat free on that one, but if say you wanted to compile your executable, you had to pay for that. That would probably be a better integration. They can get rid of their GIMP trial version completely, make the indie version free, but charge for executable so that if you wanted to share it with a friend or somebody else, I think that would be a much better model. But that's probably my biggest gripe here. The tools themselves, they work quite well. As you saw, I ran into the occasional bug. I think part of it's my internet connection. For some reason, it's not opening those extended, those embedded editors for some reason. But for the most part, it is rock steady. The language itself is pretty straightforward. I would prefer they used an off-the-shelf language, but GML, it's pretty easy to learn, as is the drag and drop. So if you dedicate yourself to this, you can probably pick up the language within a week. It's robust. The functionality is all there. I never found myself wishing, oh my god, I wish it had extra. I wish I could go ahead and create an extension. Anything I wanted to do was either built in out of the box or was available as an extension. All right, that's it for now. Hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please do, of course, click that like button. And we cover all kinds of game engines here. Across the spectrum, basically, tutorials, you name it. If that sounds good to you, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. All right, I will see you all later. Goodbye.